Hello, friends. This is Roy, and a quick note before this 106th episode of Snap Judgments gets going. We had some really significant audio issues with our awesome guest this week, so our discussion is kind of very choppy and cut up. We have about 12 or so minutes of introductions and discussion of this week's card, Peni Parker, and then you'll be taken sort of straight into the discussion of the OTA and the patch and the balance changes. Not all of the balance changes. I think it starts around Chantress, but you will get a good amount of the balance changes. I apologize. We tried to work some movie and audio editing magic, but this is the best that we could do. But I really do hope that you enjoy this episode and enjoy the insights that we were able to salvage from the terrors of technology. Hello, friends, and welcome to the 106th episode of Snap Judgments. As almost always, it is I, Roy Rogers, and joining me today is my friend and yours, the one, the only, the Space Emperor of the Snap Judgments podcasting network, now including Blue Sky, Aaron Pulse Glazer. Aaron, my friend, how are you on these doldrum days of sad season?
A week from Christmas break, my friend. How I am is a week from Christmas break.
I feel you exactly the same. I am incredibly excited for Christmas break. It's actually quite difficult. Just thinking about it right now is filling me with emotion. I cannot wait to not just be doing what I'm doing. This is the worst time of year for people in our career. And
I mean, there's also the March doldrums, right?
yes,
there's no break in sight.
There's something about the holiday break waiting room that brings out the worst in teenagers, and you just do not want to be around them anymore. But anyway, that is not really why our loyal listeners and loyal viewers are here. Instead, they're here to listen to us talk about Marvel Snap, their favorite question mark card game. And Glazer, who is joining us this evening or afternoon or day, depending on our loyal listeners, loyal viewers' viewing habits, to discuss Snap.
Instead of watching the Game Awards, we are joined by fake award-winning website. None of our websites have won awards that I know of, Scott. Scott from SnapFan. He's the head writer. He's super prolific and amazing. How you doing, Scott?
How are you guys?
We're doing pretty well. Hey, Scott, should our wonderful listeners want to find you, where would they go?
You can find me on Twitter at Scott Denham, Denim. You can find me on Blue Sky at Scosco, or you can read my articles on SnapFan.
So Scott is incredibly prolific, incredibly talented. He comes up with absolutely stellar decks. His Theorycraft decks are top of the line. Genuinely great stuff. I hadn't read SnapFan forever until I started reading him again, and I just really appreciate his work. So please do check him out.
I appreciate that.
Well, I had the awkward pleasure of, after that wonderful introduction of our friend from our old friends at SnapFan, is to say we are incredibly grateful each and every week to be the official podcasting partner of Marvel Snap Zone. Please check out their website. Many of our guests, some of our favorites, Den, Lauren, all of them go out there and write over there. So again, we're incredibly grateful each and every week to be the official podcasting partner of Marvel Snap Zone. If you want to engage with us on social media, we are on the Twitter, formerly known as X, formerly known as Twitter, and our handle there is at SnapJudgeCast. If you want to go to what they call, quote unquote, the new place, Blue Sky, Glazer's created one, and to definitely make the branding easier, he chose at SnapJudgeGlazer as the username. Again, that is at SnapJudgeGlazer. So if you're now over there on the bluer skies, check it out. If you want to use the oldest form of internet communication, the snail mail of the internet, our email is snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com. But what you really, really care about is, of course, our YouTube, where probably you are listening, watching, and commenting. And don't forget, liking and subscribing. Our YouTube is at Snap Judgments Pod, where Glazer 6 out of the 7 days a week makes daily Snap takes where multiple decks are discussed, multiple important topics from cheating to Splitsmas and everything in between. You will get it at Snap Judgments Pod. Aaron, if our loyal listeners would become our loyal viewers, what would they find on the YouTube right now?
So this is our last video releasing of the week, and you can find a casual 10 videos this week. So if you want anything covering Marvel Snap, I probably talked about it this week. 10 videos is a lot, y'all. I wouldn't expect that every week, but this will be our 10th, maybe 11th, but like certainly at least 10th video releasing this week.
Wow, that's really, really impressive. What's also impressive is the ways in which our Patreon makes it possible for Aaron to do the amazing work that he does for our community. Our Patreon is patreon.com/snapjudgments. You should go there and support because, as I say each and every week, our Patreon is a reverse pyramid scheme because Aaron needs to justify to his lovely wife and wonderful smaller child the expense that he spends on tournaments. I saw that there's a new Snap Judgments League tournament coming up that Gunny T's putting together.
Happened yesterday as of this release.
Yesterday, as of this recording. But anyway, lots of things are always happening, all thanks to the Patreon. So please join us for as low as $1. We might have some new content, $2 now. Oh, inflation! Hashtag thanks, Biden. All right. And it's inflating everywhere. All right. Anyway, even patrons, but it's $2 now. So if you join on the $2 tier, you can support us, support the community, and maybe some cool new stuff that'll be coming to you next year. All right, let's dig into what people really care about. New cards. Peni Parker, everyone's third favorite supporting character from Into the Spider-Verse. Series 5 card, 2/3, 6 KD tokens. She's got the on reveal. Add Spider to your hand. When this merges, get +1 energy next turn. What does Spider do? Well, Spider is a 3/3. On reveal, merge with one of your cards here. You can move that card next turn. Scott, I'm going to throw this to you in a second, but I want to say a really important thing for our loyal viewers. This is exactly the same slide as last week. Glazer still is covering the text of with Spider. Like, it's just, these are the things that bother me more than anything. Our loyal listeners don't get this, but our loyal viewers do, and it just bothers me every time. But anyway, Scott, thoughts, feelings, opinions, hot takes, cold takes. Do you main Peni in Rivals? What's going on?
It looks like Spider has merged onto the text there on your slide. So I was very high on Peni before she came out. I volunteered to write the preview about Peni on SnapFan. And I think she's been good. She hasn't been quite as good as I had thought she was going to be. That's not to say she's not good. I think I was just a little too high on her. She has felt replaceable in most of what I've run her in. She's a great Wiccan card. She's good in move. She's good in Phoenix Force. But she's not just like generically good. Maybe if the Spider had been like a 3/4 or a 2/3 or something, she might rise to that. I'm having fun with her. I'm playing her in a lot of decks.
So, I think she's 100% replaceable. And then I went to look up her win rate, and her win rate's like Goliath. Her win rate is insane for a 2-drop. Like, it's through the roof. She's just performing, right? Like, I was really high on her. And then I was like, oh, maybe I overrated her. And then I went to check her win rate, and I was like, oh my God. And then I just started, like, sticking her in things, right? Like, she's in hand buff. Dexter threw her in a hand buff. And, like, she's great in that hand buff. And then, like, she's obviously great with Galacta, because then you get the extra buff, and now you have, like, this super vision for a turn.
I think actually what's really benefited her is that she works really well with Galacta, which I think is one of the best cards in the game right now. Yep. Any card that works really well with Galacta right now is having a heyday. Kitty Pryde is doing really well.
Captain
Cards
Marvel.
like that are doing really well because of Galacta.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
Captain Marvel, one of my favorite cards. Thankfully, I can play her again.
Wiccan is, no matter what Derek tells you, an absolutely amazing card, an absolutely amazing deck. It's the card I was most wrong on in all of 2024. I actually went and looked through. Wiccan is the one card I really, really, really missed on because I couldn't figure out what the hell to make of it. So,
well, maybe you didn't miss. Maybe he wasn't as good then. He's gotten quite a few more tools.
I thought he was bad. I thought he would be bad.
Okay, well, either way, he's gotten better now with some more tools. People figure out kind of how to play with them.
Classic
Roy W.
Wiccan is really good right now.
Yeah. Roy W, because I totally said Wiccan was going to be good. So.
You did. I was unclear how to work Wiccan. Wiccan ended up being amazing. Penny's amazing with Wiccan. It's amazing with move cards. It's just sort of like I stuck a spider on an Angela, right? And then I moved it and then played 3 cards on Angela. And now all of a sudden that's like a lane win. And your opponent cannot plan for that if your board is half empty. There's a lot of stuff like that just this card allows you to do. The extra energy is really solid. I think it only is really worth doing with Agony and Spider itself. I don't really like any of Phoenix Force, excuse me. But I don't really like any of the other merges for Penny. But there's just a lot. This card gives you 6 or 7 different little advantages depending on where you play her, and all those little advantages add up to wins in Marvel Snap. At least that's my take. Although she is an endgame player's card, right? I don't think she's an earlier mid-game player's card.
Yeah, one thing I had an opponent do to me today is they got extra energy from Penny multiple times in the same game because they played her onto Agony, and then later they played, I think, a symbiote Spider-Man, and you'll get that energy each time.
Pretty cool.
The way Sizer is using her right now in his move deck is he's playing Hope Summers, right? And he sort of just tries to keep that Penny lane empty sometimes if he doesn't have Hope. And then as you're trying to go into the last turn of the game, when you want to usually be playing either Captain Marvel and Juggernaut or Shangan Juggernaut, you need that extra energy. And then if you just drop Spider that extra turn, all of a sudden it's a Galacta deck. So you all of a sudden have a 9 power Penny, right? And now, you have this 9 power Penny plus a Shang and a Juggernaut, or a Captain Marvel and a Juggernaut, and it's just it's insane. It's just really, really strong. And that Penny is moving. So again, anyone who you've now just made yourself a bigger vision.
Yeah, I mean, so Glazer, does she live up to the hype in bounce? I've seen
move, yes.
Bounce move.
So is she required for that list? No. Is she very good in that list? Yes. So she opens up a play pattern that doesn't exist for that list otherwise, where if you have Human Torch, you basically would never play Human Torch in that deck before, right? So now you can go Human Torch, Penny, Spider on Human Torch, move Human Torch, and immediately frigate it. And that's just a lot of power. Right? You now have a 1/10 in your hand, and you have all these bounce cards to be able to bounce it and do all these extra shenanigans for all this extra move, and you're not going to be able to use Spider, right? But having 2 1/10s is a good way to win a game of Marvel Snap.
Can you face Killmonger?
Sure. Not a lot of Killmonger in the meta.
No. So that brings us to Frigga. And I know Glazer has strong opinions about Frigga. What do we think about Frigga, Aaron?
Me? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I think Frigga's great. I think Frigga's genuinely a really good card. I knew they were going to.
She went to 4 power now, by the way.
She went to 4 power. Yeah.
From 3.
I knew they were going to buff her because people kept telling me Frigga was terrible and awkward, and it's just if you want to play Frigga every game, every time you draw her, you're going to be severely disappointed. That's not what she is. She's the I saw this thing that makes me unbeatable card, right? She takes a game where you're not sure if you're going to win and makes it the easiest snap of all time, and your opponent doesn't know that. Always. They do in move bounce, but they don't with anti-venom and other things necessarily.
No.
And those easy snaps are extra cubes. I think Frigga is excellent. I'm always slightly annoyed when they do this when the card has been out of spotlights for a few weeks. But I do think Frigga is a very, very good card. And honestly, I hope people just sort of ignore this so they make her a 2. She's broken as shit as a 2, just for the record.
They're not going to put on reveal draw a card at 2, Glazer.
I think they were closer to that than you think. Like, you have not heard people, like, there's like 5 people in the world who seem to like Frigga. It is so rare to find anyone who likes this card. The people who like this card are all, like, super high MMR, right?
Yeah, I do kind of wish they'd given it a little bit more time to trickle down before buffing her.
Yeah.
I think the reason they did us is they really, really want us to play her with hammers.
Mhm.
I think that was one of their design goals for her, and nobody's playing her with hammers. So this plus a change we'll see later, I think, is an attempt to get us to do that.
I have a thought when we get to that card that I'm not going to save now. I could see that. It's just, they're going to sell us anti-venom. This card is amazing with anti-venom. Like, right? They just sold us all these move cards, and no one can make move work outside of like 12 people in the world, right? And they're just, can you play Frigga in the deck? She's like, can you use this card? And people are like, no, we don't like it.
I think move is so strong right now that that's going to start to trickle down. It's so good.
I don't think it can. So when
if
I
it
play
gets
move,
good enough, it can.
I don't think so. I mean, it's good enough now. It's the best deck.
Yeah.
If you play against someone who knows what they're doing with move, you feel like you're just like, why am I even bothering? There's nothing I can do.
I think it's so strong now. People are going to start to practice it and get better at it.
I don't think so. I've played a lot of move. I had last season I had like a 70% win rate with move. Most of my games since I started streaming are online, so I actually have win rates with decks now. So I had like a 70% win rate with move in like a reasonable sample of games, and I was barely positive cubes because it is so mentally taxing to play that list that actually snapping with that list is like fucking brain surgery. I'm like winning 70% of my games, but my opponents are snapping me in these weird situations. I'm so like cognitively overloaded by the 8,000 things I have to remember about sequencing and playing in different locations, and then I'm like, oh my god, that location was that whole time. Like I lost a bunch of cubes to the like get a copy of your opening hand thing because like I was paying so much attention to the 18 other things I did that now all of a sudden one of my bounces didn't go off, and I was like, oh, like shit like that.
Yeah.
Move is this isn't bounce. Like, I think anyone can learn bounce. I think if you care to learn bounce, you will learn bounce. I think move is just like hard, capital H, hard.
I think move bounce people are gonna be able to figure out.
Okay, let's find out.
I think cards like Frigga are high skill cap cards because you have to know exactly what to copy, and you fuck up what you're supposed to copy way more than you get it right until you sort of hit that skill, the other end of the skill plateau, and that takes a long time. And nothing feels worse than like you play this, you get some 3/3 or even a 3/4, and it's completely the wrong card that you copied, and you're like, why am I playing this card? But I think for people who understand the play patterns, I think Frigga is obviously extremely powerful. And I think she won't become extremely obviously powerful to players until a really obvious combo deck plays her. That is like, you always copy X card.
Yeah.
And then you do it. And then once that happens, and it will at some point, like anytime there's a card like this in a card game, like something will eventually break. And when that happens, I think that's when Frigga will become a well-known and well-respected card by your median player.
So what people were doing wrong with Frigga that made them really hate the card, and I know a lot, like I kept seeing people on streams do this, is they would go Madam Web Frigga, Madam Web like dagger or something, Madam Web, and then like the Human Torch thing. And that's a terrible play pattern. That does not work. You lose the games that way.
There you go.
It's too slow, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the other half of these changes. Now, as someone who remembers Shuri at the top of her reign of terror, the fact that she is now a 4/3 is wild to me, and showing just like how power creep has gotten Marvel Snap. Other thoughts, gentlemen, about Shuri, who again, she's now a 4/3 up from a 4/1. She's 3 times as strong.
I don't think it's enough to bring her back into the meta. I think that part of the problem is Galacta now takes up some of her design space. There's a lot of decks that would have not have naturally played, but could have used Shuri, but they'll just use Galacta and get the smaller bonus more reliably. Or Gwenpool. Like, there may be a deck out there that wants to play Galacta and Gwenpool and Shuri, but I think that's unlikely. And the whole Red Skull thing, I don't think is coming back unless they change her back to not her own lane. When that deck was really unstoppable, it's when you could play the Red Skull behind a Cosmo that was already on the board. So unless they change that part, I don't think that specific deck's coming back.
Well, and the Taskmaster change brutalizes it too, right?
Absolutely.
Like Taskmaster being 6 there wrecks it, because now it doesn't get that extra set floating 7 power either.
Yeah.
But
do you think that she'll be able to see more play with this? I mean, she's clearly a better card than she was yesterday, but I don't really see where she fits, especially now that we have like Gwenpool and Galacta.
So the problem, I think even more than Galacta's a problem, but I think more than Gwenpool, it's that Taskmaster is a 6. I'm pretty sure that Kitty, especially with Galacta, the Shuri Kitty deck should still work, except that you can't play that with Taskmaster anymore.
Yeah, like maybe there's like a Kitty Galacta Shuri deck out there that plays all of them.
Like that, I think that would be fine, but like you can't Taskmaster the huge Kitty, so like you just spent your whole game making a card that like doesn't work anymore.
Well, there's kind of a lot of incidental extra energy nowadays. There's Luna Snow, there's Hope Summers, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
I don't know if you can take a turn off from building your Kitty if she's +1, not +2, to do that. Hope is your best bet, I think. Like, it's worth building around. I think there's something there. I'm just not convinced. I think, like, if it's that hard to build and that hard to do, there's other powerful things that are easier to do and more consistent and don't require you to hit these giant combos. But I do think that, like, if Taskmaster cost 5 and I didn't have to do the extra work, it would be worth trying.
Yeah.
Like, if I could focus my deck instead of on extra energy on just make Big Kitty, copy Big Kitty, that rather than have to have extra energy and then redundancy for extra energy.
Well, you can just frigga that Kitty.
You could frigga that Kitty, yeah, that's got to be your turn 5 play then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have Ava has a version of that, and I'm just gonna say he ended up pumping with it pretty good. I think it's really fun. I have it in my game. I play it too. I pump with it too. It's fun. It's powerful, but it's like you don't get quite big enough anymore.
All right. Speaking of OG cards getting buffed again, we've got Lockjaw is back up to being a 4/5. Thoughts and feelings about the tyranny of the Dog Man returning once again to his old reign of terror strength.
I hope he's not good. I think Lockjaw is one of the most unpleasant play patterns in the game, up there with like Hela. But I also don't think this point of power does that much. They really, really, really want us to play hammers. It's Asgard season. Internally, one of the ideas they had for Frigga was hammers. One of the payoffs you can do with a hammer is Lockjaw. They really want us to play hammers, and people are refusing to do it.
Let's just talk about the hammer too while we have this conversation.
All right, Stormbreaker is now not an 0-1, but an 0-3. Still doubles Bill's power.
Personally, I love the change. I like the idea that it's a relevant body on the board. I'm not sure how much better it makes Beta Ray Bill, but I think it's a clever change from a design perspective.
So, I agree with that part completely. Thors are clunky. Like, I'm putting multiple things in my deck that I then have to draw, that I then have to play cards to draw, that I have to play at very specific times, right?
Yeah.
I've got to curve out, so I've got 2 turns to play Eitri, or Eitri is dead. If I'm going to curve out. And if I'm not curving out, then I'm not putting enough power on the board as a general rule. I have to draw Jane if I'm not doing my perfect curve out. And, like, there's just too many different things to make it. Like, it's a cool design. I'm very happy that Thors exist in the game. I'm not saying that I don't like it. I'm saying that it's not a competitive strategy. Or, like, you can win with it. You can win with anything. It's Marvel Snap. But, like, it's not a top of the meta competitive strategy, and I don't think it ever will be unless they make something completely broken for it.
Yeah, they'd have to have a way to play out the Thors earlier. Yeah. But I don't think it's necessarily that bad of a thing that it's not achieving top tier. They've given us a couple of weeks worth of experimentation material with this between Frigga and this and Lockjaw. There's things people can try, certainly.
Well, if they weren't let's not curse at them. If they weren't ridiculous, we would also have Hitmonkey next week, which would go in that deck and be really cool.
Yeah, that's fun.
But they've decided to not give us Hitmonkey and instead give us the always useful Docket.
Well, one thing that I did a lot of experimentation with after getting Atri is Atri, Loki, Thor as a 3-card package without Jane, without Bill. And it's not that bad. Like, especially if you open Atri into Loki, it's super strong. And then your fail case for the Atri is you can get the hammer reliably so that he's like a reasonably big card. It's not terrible, but it wasn't like good enough. But you would never consider Bill in a Jane-less list. At least now I'm going to try it. I don't anticipate that it'll work, but you can play Beta Ray Bill down and then get the Stormbreaker back that same turn with Atri.
So part of the problem though is Beta Ray Bill costs 4.
Yeah.
And Atri costs 1 and Zabu costs 1. And I know which of the cards I'd rather play with my deck, right? Like
I think they gave us something interesting to tinker with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect it to go anywhere, but I mean,
can Beta Ray Bill be a 3/5 also?
3/5? I don't think they want him to overlap at cost.
I mean, just let him overlap. I think that's the way you make it work. You let them be the same cost and just say now you don't have to worry about. I think what
they're really trying to get us to, they want their cards to be usable in different ways. They really want a list with one of those cards to work without Jane. That's obviously a really hard thing to achieve. It's going to require multiple different kinds of card changes, but I think that's what they're going for. I don't think they're trying to make Jane armors better. Like, that's already a deck that exists and has a play pattern. They're trying to get us to use the cards in some different ways.
Well, then make them better. I mean, I know they're trying. It's just I just don't like.
Well,
I think it's too clunky.
I'd like to see Mjolnir get some power too.
Yeah, but Mjolnir's free, so they can't do that.
Well, it's the same as Stormbreaker. Stormbreaker's 0/3 now.
No. Wrong free. I mean, like, you don't have to buy Thor.
Oh, yeah.
You have to buy Beta Ray Bill.
No, but they sell you that ultimate variant that makes the Mjolnir have an ultimate.
Oh, the nullified? Yeah. I don't like null. So
there's something they can monetize there.
Fair enough. Right.
All right. Cerebro is now down to a 2-0. This is a big change. Cerebro has been this way for the whole history of the game, as far as I can remember. Is this going to resurrect this archetype that is definitely more meme than dream? But can the meme become a dream with this change?
Well, going from 3 cost to 2 cost is a major difference. I think maybe there's some people out there underestimating how huge of a difference is. This is a change that I've advocated for Cerebro for a long time. People ask, how can you make Cerebro better? Just make him 2 cost. And people would tell me it's too extreme whenever I pitched that on Twitter. But they had to do this because Cerebro was getting power crept out of the game. 4 times 7 is still always going to be 28 in each lane or whatever you're aiming for. Like, it has a hard cap on it. They needed to give it a pretty sizable buff to make it people want to play with it at all in the future. So it's a big buff, and I think it makes it a lot more fun and a lot more flexible. Like, you would never do things with Cerebro before where you would just like put it in so that it affects like 3 or 4 of your cards. But at 2 cost, maybe it's at least worth playing around with. I mean, obviously it makes like C3 and C5 a lot better. But it's also just a more fun card to try to find memes with, which is what it was always for.
I think it is a very good card, and if Galacta disappeared tomorrow, it might even be a meta card. But Cerebro is giving +2, and then I have to do a whole bunch of work to get it to +4, and Galacta is giving +3 several times, which just lets me outscale Cerebro most of the time, unless it gets to, like, Dream Roll. And so, like, I think that Galacta sort of keeps Cerebro out of the meta, and that's why they buffed it. I do really, really like this change. I think a Cerebro 3 that ends up running Ravonna with Cerebro and probably Valkyrie is either a real deck or damn close to a real deck.
Yeah,
and I'm excited to experiment with it. Yeah,
going from 2 to 3 allows you to play way more tech, which I think is the biggest change for the card, and that's the only way it's going to be able to compete. Things like
I can last turn it with Sean.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's real.
Yeah. Or you got Ravonna out, you can play it last turn with Valkyrie.
Yeah. And that's even like a 1-lane play that turns an obvious lost lane into a 1-lane.
You can play Shadow King, Lizard, and Cerebro in one turn, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot, like, this is, I think, going to end up being a real card now.
At least people will play with it. I think it was so close to getting to the point of being completely obsolete that people weren't even going to look at it for fun. They needed to do something with it, and they needed to do something pretty extreme. So I'm glad that they did this.
Agreed. This is my favorite change in the whole update, including arishem, which was necessary.
Yeah.
But, like, this is my favorite change in the whole update by, like, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only, like, I think really great change.
Yeah, well, it's the only one that makes you, like, want to open your deck builder, which is what the best OTAs do.
Yeah, I thought they would do more. Like, in my head, they were going to do more to, like, give us new toys in this OTA because they're going to be gone for a month and they need people to play the fucking game.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't understand their decision-making in the slightest in a lot of ways. Like, right? Like, this OTA should have been like, hey, these, like, 5 cards that we can build around, we're going to give you something cool to do with them to keep you playing while we just go on our vacations. Nope, apparently not.
I think they want to do OTAs like that, but they don't want to do too many changes all at once. And I think they save that for when there's not a big problem card that they have to try to solve, like arishem.
I agree, but
I also think they've gotten
OTA
way more conservative with OTAs. The first few OTAs were awesome. And I heard some complaints about that, especially from more casual players. I loved it. I thought it was the best aspect of this game was just massive OTAs. I'd be happy if they changed every single card every single week. But a casual player is less interested in it.
Yeah.
And the acquisition model affects everything too. People wouldn't care if their cards got changed if they weren't so anxious about being able to afford them.
Right. But if you're going to change cards, that's why I think they should focus more on, like, series. They don't do this because, again, they really, really love money. But, like, they should focus their OTA changes on Series 3. Series 3 is like a bajillion cards. They have plenty to mess with there. That's where they should be focusing these changes.
Yeah. I really want a Mantis change. I want an Adam Warlock change.
Yep. I mean, a million cards, right? Like, even, like, less, like, obviously terrible cards. You just take cards that are sort of okay. Right? Like, we're going to say for the next, like, 2 months, the Guardians are, like, going to actually give you, like, top-line stats. What happens?
I would love it. That's why one of the best changes they ever did was when they changed Enchantress to 6 power way back when, and it was too strong. But it was fun. Yeah. It was fun to have, like, a different.
It's a good time to play.
I think casual players really dislike that. Like those imbalance patches they did. I think got negative.
I just thought they were boring. I didn't like the imbalance patches. I like when they make earlier series cards viable. Like when Captain Marvel 2 went from a 5/6 to a 4/6.
I know, she was suddenly the best card in the game. I loved it. Because I'd already been playing her a lot because she's one of my favorite cards. I just think it's a unique mechanic. And then overnight she was probably the best card in the game for like a week or two.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it was more than a week or two. She lasted a little bit. But
yeah.
Like Black Bolt was terrible, and then Stature hit Series 4, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is like one of the best cards in the game." All of a sudden, shit like that is cool. And Marvel Snap being 12 cards really lets that happen.
Yeah,
and I wish they did it more. I wish they leaned more into it.
Well, they've got Kang coming up in a spotlight. I think in a couple months. What's your prediction? Are they going to rework him before that spotlight?
No,
I think they really, really. It would be a huge mistake to let that spotlight come without changing it.
So wait. What I'm going to ask you is, do you think if they have a chance to make a huge mistake or do something good, which of the two are they going to do?
Oh my god.
I'm not trying to be rude. That's just how they do it.
No, you're not wrong. All right. Elsa, though. We didn't really talk about her. So she's now 4. She's a 3/4, rather, up from a 3/3. These are, speaking of cards that used to be on the top of the meta and may have been mistakes when they were released. What do we think about Elsa?
I think as long as she costs 3, she's always going to be awkward. But she's gotten significantly better even before this change in the past couple weeks, just because of meta shifts and Galacta again. I think she's a pretty decent card with Luna Snow. If you bought Luna Snow and you're desperate for a way to play her, I think she's not as bad as she was, and I'm just happy that they buffed her by a point.
I agree with that. So, is Galacta going to be a 4-4 or a 4-5?
Which one? Galacta?
Is Galacta going to be a 4-4 or 4-5? Because they're doing one of the two.
I think they should make Galacta 4-3.
Really?
But they're not going to.
Your question
wasn't what I think. Your question was, what are they going to do? Yeah. They're going to make her a 4-5.
Okay, I think so too. I think she should be a 4-4. I think they want. I think when you sell people a card, you should probably try not to break it too bad. And I think 4-3 might make her unplayable.
There's plenty of people I know out there that think at 4-3 she's still broken.
I mean, maybe Brood is kind of stupid.
Brood's pretty good. I don't know. I think there's. I don't know. I don't think she's totally broken right now. I think she's just very good.
No, I don't think she's broken at all. I think she's arguably the best card in the game, though.
Yeah.
And when they don't. A conversation that I have a lot with casual players is they're like, why did they change this? It wasn't broken. It's like, that's not what their OTAs are necessarily for. Occasionally, the arishem change happens because they think it's a little bit broken, right?
Yeah.
But most changes are just ways to shake up the meta and keep things interesting.
Which I love.
Yeah, me too.
It's my favorite thing about OTAs.
Galacta is in 90% of decks, which is great while they're selling her. And when they're not selling her, they don't want her to be in 90% of decks anymore.
They've been a little quicker on the trigger with changes to Season Pass cards.
Positive and negative, right? Because they did fix Gilgamesh and a few others. And then, and the Surtur change, I will maintain, was more psychological than actual.
Yeah. I actually think Surtur was a built-in change. It's like they had a perforation on him. They knew that they needed him to get to 10 for it to be satisfying to play with Scar. So they gave him an extra point so he could get to 11, knowing that they could shave that back.
Agreed. And yeah, and then they knew that would bring the play rate down enough that they'd be fine. Yeah. The only card in 2024 that they actually really nerfed, that's a season pass card, is Agent Venom. They buffed 3 or 4, but the only real they nerfed Scar by 1 point, I don't care. They nerfed Surtur by 1 point, I don't care.
Yeah.
The only real change, the only real nerf in a year was Agent Venom. I think they've been basically home runs with season pass cards almost all year.
Yeah, and Agent Venom needed a change. He was the best card in the game.
Oh, yep, agreed. I'm not arguing. I think it's just interesting because people will be they sell us these cards and they change them immediately. I'm it's 1 in 12, guys. It's not the
All right. I'll turn it over to you, Aaron. This is your...
So, there's just 2 quick questions to chat, and then we're basically almost done. So, what do you think the future of Snap is like? The card acquisition, the issues. You don't have to have solutions. We can enumerate problems. I don't want to have the same conversation that we always have, but I'm curious just where we go, because we, I don't know, it feels like the ground has been trodden, but it also feels like an important conversation to have at the same time. So, Scott?
What do I think about the future of Snap? I think that I don't know. I told you my prediction earlier that their short-term fix is going to be cheaper bundles. I don't think people are going to accept that as a solution, and they're going to complain. We've got things like character mastery coming, and what happens is they get their hopes a little too high on everything. I've seen a lot of comments about character mastery, oh, if it's only you earn points for variants and splits, then it's not going to be fun. But that's what it is. That is what it's going to be. So, I don't know. I'm just a little worried that they put themselves in a position where nothing they do can be seen as positive, even when they are doing positive things.
I think they might have. We talked about this literally at last year's Christmas episode or New Year's episode in our predictions. Are they going to hit the point where the community just doesn't trust them and listen to them anymore? And we worry that they might be getting to that point a year ago, and I think they're just at that point. I think the game can go on fundamentally indefinitely just because they've created a money-making system with their whales, and like they just get enough casual players to keep it going.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of a bubble like people can exist in. There's a lot of casual players that don't even know any of these issues are issues.
Yep.
And people people like you and me we're going to continue to play the game no matter what steps they make. So I think they'll have enough player base. There's this dire talk that it's going to like totally die out. It's going to trail on for a while. I hope they can do something to like get new players though.
So I'm curious if something like Marvel Snap 2 ends up being the solution.
There's going to be so much salt if they do that. Like
not now, not anytime soon. This like long term. I think like they go until like it looks like they're hitting that like precipice of where this just stops being viable, and then they're like Marvel Snap 2.
But why wouldn't they just add that as a game mode?
Sure, maybe they do, right? And then they rotate out everything else. So like everyone starts in the same grounds, and you can keep like if you have whatever, you can keep some of your resources for it, right? But then they just invent a whole bunch of new resources so that the whales still have to buy, and then the new players are at more or less the same level, right?
Yeah.
Like I think I don't know if it's a mistake, but a thing that actually ended up hurting Marvel Snap was how many people they had in their closed beta. And like those people were so far into the game when everyone else got their hands on it.
I remember. So I started at global launch, and I remember how far ahead those people were. They were so far ahead that you couldn't be creating content unless you were in the beta. You couldn't be competitive unless you were in the beta. Those beta players got way, way far ahead.
So I think, and like that gap, for like even global launch players now compared to people who started several months ago. A thing I've been doing on stream, and I did it last night, and I'll probably have done it again by the time this happens, is I have people that are in the middle of Series 3 send me their collection, and I build them like 5 decks, and then I say, here's what you target going forward. Here's the like 5 Series 4 and 5 Series cards, 5 cards you're looking for as far as what's out there. If you go get these, you can compete for a long while. Like, I think that kind of gap, and there's only one of me, and there's many, many, many more people that need that kind of help, right?
Yeah.
So I think that gap and that growing gap means that at some point they just have to press a reset button. The like further they get, I think the more they have to be like, we invented a new game system, we had some successes and failures, reset, let's start from scratch, and we know exactly how to do this now.
Maybe. I mean, I love the gameplay. I feel like they would just move on to a different game rather.
Maybe. I think that
like
the Marvel license...
Candy Crush.
Sure, maybe. So I don't think they want to.
They already have job postings listed for a new game.
Yeah, Brody's no longer like their vision.
Snap.
Yeah, their vision people are on a new game. Like, and
it's a puzzler. It's like a match 3 type game.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's not the kind of game that the card game audience that they attracted to this game is going to want to jump to. I actually think that was kind of the fatal, not mistake, but like issue that happened with Marvel Snap is they made a game that appealed to Magic the Gathering players and Pokemon players and card players and poker players when they were trying to just make a mobile gacha game that could just get a bunch of money. But they came up with too good of gameplay. So it attracted this whole audience of people that were not going to accept Nexus events. So they rejected it, and then they had to come up with a totally different economic model.
Yeah, and they still have not.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be angry in the comments, but each change they made has been slightly better than the previous system.
If they could like genuinely figure out how to get like if the audience only engaged with spotlights by optimizing them, and I'm aware that that's like not a realistic thing. I'm not suggesting that should happen. Yeah. That's not my point. My point is if they did, this would be the most incredibly generous system like ever. Right? Like if people engage with the spotlight system by only ever optimizing it, it would be so insanely and incredibly generous.
Yeah. Well, Roy, you commented about playing paper card games. I mean, to me, this game is not expensive. To me, this game is very affordable, even to the point of being cheap. But that's just not the community, how the community feels about the game.
Because the pain is different, right? Like the fact that right now I could go to a game store and spend $500 on a new Magic deck, but I get all of those cards when I want them at one time versus the like multiple hoops you have to jump through, right? To get a like you don't like let's say I haven't played in a month and I missed a month's worth of spotlight cards. How do I get those fast? Like, can I in an evening that I want to get those cards, can I do it?
Yeah.
No. Right. And I think and then to do it fast, you have to spend a lot of money, right? And I think that is the feeling like that causes it to feel expensive. I think the fact that it's one card versus 4 cards or 3 cards also creates a feeling, right? Like you're spending $50 on one card in Marvel Snap, which is the same as spending $50 on 4 Magic cards, right?
Well, what percentage of your deck is that?
Yeah, it's like, it's all in the numbers and the illusion. For me, I think this future of Marvel Snap is, it's the right way to put it. It's like foggy, I guess you could say. I think that there's some good things in, I think, the future of Marvel Snap. I mean, clearly the IP remains resonant with people. It has a core gameplay loop that people enjoy. It's close enough to card games that people are familiar with, but different enough that it's exciting, that it's easy to onboard people. But when these kind of live service games enter their adolescence, this is the most dangerous time if you love the game, right? They need to find new ways to make money. It gets big. There's often way more mistakes that are made in this phase because you can kill the golden goose really quickly, right? And you can already feel some of the energy leaving Marvel Snap, and that's scary and dangerous, right? But it still has a lot going for it. I think the success of Rivals shows that there's still juice in sort of Marvel IP. I mean, this would love slop being sent to people and being sold to people. And so I think Snap can like that fog can clear and it can be bright and beautiful. I just think they need to be careful. Otherwise, it will just simply become the waiting room before NetEase stops paying for the license, and then we get some other Marvel online card game, right? Like you've all been there, like the Freedom Fight, the Marvel Future Fight people, right? Like a lot of these IP games start off really strong, enter their adolescence, something horrible happens, and then they just become a sort of like, let's make as much money as we can until the IP comes too expensive to renew.
Marvel Future Fight still exists, baby.
Yeah, how many people play that game?
That will never die.
Yeah. And so I'm interested to see what ends up happening there. I think for folks who are really plugged into Snap, I understand that it's like a very sort of like dangerous and scary time. And I think Glazer is right that Second Dinner doesn't have sort of the respect that it had certainly 18 months ago, and probably since the last time we did this. I think also about the rebooting Marvel Snap, I don't think you can do that. Like, it's just too much. I think you could do a rotation, but they would have to figure out a way that it makes like sense to players, right? And that there's a mode that feels somewhat satisfactory. This is like really hard to do. I think if you were ever playing the last Ben Brode game that did this, Hearthstone, his other one, like when Wild was created, there was a lot of salt, and Blizzard made a lot of promises about supporting Wild and then didn't really follow through on them, at least when I was still playing Hearthstone, in a way that like kind of made people not feel like their collections were as valuable. And so I think some version of rotation is something that they could do to solve some of their problems, but they have to be really careful about it because you want to make sure that the like long-standing players feel like their digital cards with 0 resale value have something of value. So
how do I want to say this? They need to figure out how to. They're not going to get away from weekly releases, right? And the only way I could think of, and maybe there's another way that I'm just not thinking of, and they have, but I don't think they have either, to get people to say we're all on the same page and we're all going to get a card weekly, or not. Right?
I don't think they're going to give people a card weekly.
They're not going to stop releasing a card weekly.
Yeah, but I meant like free.
I didn't say. No one said free.
We said everyone gets a card.
No, everyone should be at a spot where everyone can get a card weekly. Right? Where you're not looking for 17 cards at the same time. If you're releasing one card weekly, people need to have most of the other stuff.
Well, I think one of the solutions they've already started is they're producing way more cards, which I'm a little sad that the community hasn't enjoyed that more. I think people really have locked into this idea of having 100% of the cards. I think if Second Dinner just produced way more cards, that would make it so that they could afford to give away a card a week, not free, but like with the normal amount of resources you get. But I think at this point, people just have locked into, I want to be collection complete.
And I'll double back actually to the earlier point you guys brought up about the gap between beta players and global launch players. Like I started shortly after global launch in like November, middle of November, right? Or is it October, Glazer? I'm trying to remember.
It was whenever.
Yeah.
Around that.
And while the gap felt big, it felt surmountable, right? Like it felt like if I play enough, if I take out the most powerful card in gaming, my credit card, I can spend a reasonable amount of money and get caught up. And Marvel Snap just doesn't, like, it has a lot of cards, but it also doesn't have a lot of cards. Like, it really doesn't, right? And sometimes it can feel hopeless to get up to, like, the amount of cards that exist in a Magic the Gathering set, right? I think we're at, less than 500 cards, right? And that, I think, is where the series, like, the obsession with becoming complete is, it feels like a smaller number of cards than the lived experience, there feels like there's more cards than there actually are, which creates this sense of like achievability, but it's like getting constantly moved down. Like if you ever take a month, and when you fall off the train, it feels like a big gap.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you go, I felt this many times. Like I'm series complete or almost series complete. All I don't have is some shitty series 4 cards. I fall off the train, like in the symbiote month, and suddenly, like, I can't play the meta decks. And it's not easy for me to get the cards to play the meta deck because it's not that month anymore. What do I do?
Well, one of the ironic things is, one of the solutions they could come up with is just directly sell the cards, like Magic or any other card game. And I think people that come from traditional card games would be perfectly happy to pay $10 or $20 for any card they want. The problem is they kind of locked themselves into this box where they did the advertisement of, what if you couldn't come in and buy all the cards? So there's two camps. There's a camp that's going to criticize them if they directly sell the cards, and there's a camp that wants to directly buy the cards. And they're just kind of trying to walk this middle road. I personally think they should just sell the cards. Make it so that there's a scrolling option in your shop and you can click a card and buy it for $20. Because then really competitive card players might come back into the game if they know they can get the cards they need to be able to play top meta decks.
But that's so much cheaper than they want to sell them to us for.
Okay, $30, even if it's $30, $50. Yeah. I mean, I think that Second Dinner is perfectly happy to have a system where there's 5 cards a month and everybody can basically get 4 of them as a season pass holder. But they're not willing to give us that last little bit of content because then they have nothing to sell to the whales.
Right.
I mean, that was the issue with the previous Spotlight system, is it was so easy to accumulate so many resources that you would just never have to pay again. So they had to change that system, but they just changed it to one that just slowly eroded over time.
Okay,
You want to talk about cheating, Glazer?
sure. What are your thoughts about the infinite leaderboard and cheating and so on? Because I think I have a different take than I have had before on this that I'll get to. Scott, want to lead us off?
I mean, I don't have particularly strong feelings about it. I think the bigger issue was the racism that you talked about in your video. I really would like for those kinds of groups to be shut down, stunted out of the game. That was very concerning to me. Obviously, I don't think people should be paying or win trading or whatever, but I also don't care that much.
So, a quick note on the racism. There's also a fairly severe ableism issue in the Italian community that was brought to light after this that I wasn't aware of, particularly in the Atrix community, which I'm not going to mince words, which is completely unacceptable and horrifying, and I really wish Second Dinner had any morals about this.
Yeah, there's the one alliance, like the 104 alliance.
Yes.
They should just ban every single player in that alliance.
Yep, or shoot them one message
and that's not even
give
like
them one warning.
That's not even like a large portion of the Italian community. That's 25 people that they just need to get.
So no, there's apparently quite a few 104 alliances because they're Atrix's alliances.
Yeah, Atrix has been,
and he's their biggest streamer. Yeah. So if I would shoot one message and be like, "This ends, or you're all gone from our game," and then it does or it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm fine with a warning. To be like, hey, you're idiot teenagers, and people act like idiot teenagers in games, even when they're not.
I think
Cut it out.
I think the reason it's not going to happen is that's a lot of like research legwork for some employee at Second Dinner or Newverse to do, and I don't think they have anybody who's capable of doing that.
Well, that's sad, but okay. Look. If you gave me a weekend and we're like, find all these players, I could find all those players.
Honestly, they've been like
find all those
Lauren and
just
Chase
survive
help them out with
lawsuits.
stuff. You should message somebody and ask if you can help them out.
I mean, the problem isn't that they can't identify the players. The problem is, do they have the data stored that if, say, player X spent $10,000, let's just say that, right? Mm-hmm. Right? They were this hyper whale, and they were part of one of these communities. They get banned. They sue, right, for, unjust, cancellation of their accounts, that they didn't violate the terms of, is it worth Second Dinner? Does Second Dinner have that information reliably on hand that they can easily pull and to give to their lawyers to bat off this nuisance suit instead of their lawyers coming and yelling at them? It's like, why are we spending the money to defend against this stupid lawsuit when you could have just let these people do this thing that they can't prove? Like that's where I think that they just, it's like Second Dinner's not set up. They're not Riot, right? Which will go to my point about this, about the specific win trading. Like they don't have this whole department whose job it is to monitor this, right? And even games like Magic or Flesh and Blood, where there are people who run these big tournaments in-house, they still don't have the resources to police this stuff super well, right? And I don't think Second Dinner is set up.
Yeah, I don't think Second Dinner has a real strong idea of what's happening in the top ranks anyway.
Yeah. No, they're
not in those Discord chats. They're not in those games.
Barely, Glenn. No one knows.
Yeah.
I think I want to double back to what Scott said and Glazer said in his video. I'm sorry, win trading to boost some dude who's going to change his name to one of the worst Nazis is just such a wild fucking thing to do. And
that should be banned immediately.
He should have been banned immediately. Also, and I believe this because when two of the informants actually said this, they had no idea that was his plan until he did it, and then they were like, "What the fuck?" And his answer was, "I don't see a problem."
Okay, well, yeah, definitely ban that dude. That's inarguable, and that's within
Teflon Don was Trump.
Don't fucking do that. Just don't.
So the original name wasn't great. But yeah.
All right, specifically cheating. So, cheating's bad. Win trading happens in games, particularly at a high level. Like anyone who falls, it does happen. People scoop to each other and all this kind of things. But the thing that I think is, what's the right word I'm trying to find here? Sad, I guess, about this whole story is and I say this with, no, you know what? In the context of the story, I don't say this with love.
the top of the leaderboard doesn't fucking matter in this game. Like it matters as an internal, like how well are you doing, and you can say you're number one, but it doesn't qualify you for the world championship. It doesn't qualify you for a tournament that allows you to say you're the best Marvel Snap player. It is literally making the number go up, and that's it. Like, why go through all this fucking mess? Like, I'm sorry. If you were number one, that is awesome. You're one of the best Marvel Snap players. You could literally beat me. Your pinky could beat me in Marvel Snap, and that's it. You don't play with any other finger. You've beat me. Cool. Awesome. Happy for you. That's great. If you fall to number 3, that's also fucking great. You're the third person in that region or that world. Like, it's not like you're getting an invitation to a $10,000 tournament. Like,
so we're only talking to like 5 people at that point, but like, I know those 5 people pretty well.
Like, why?
Right? Like, I used to have conversations with Brade all the time. Brade desperately wanted to be number one. He didn't win trade or anything. I'm not trying to imply in any way, shape, or form that he did. But Brade is like a fairly big streamer in Snap, and everyone knows who he is. So I'm using him as an example. He used to get really frustrated and upset that he couldn't quite get to number one. Part of it is that basically everyone, like, part of the reason I'm not top 100, and this occasionally gets me yelled at, but it's true, is I'm not that competitive. I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, that's why they're win trading and doing this. Some people just get
inherently competitive. These are inherently competitive people where that number one actually matters to them. And to some extent it matters, honestly, and to some extent it doesn't. And none of that is really my point at this point. I think I understand that well enough, even if it cannot be me. Like, I started the season at 110. I was like, oh, I can be top 100. I was like, no, I'm going to stay in. Thanks, though. Like, I just don't care. It doesn't do, like, no part of my self-worth matters for that, right? Like, but I feel like it does for a lot of people. Like, it affects their self-worth.
It definitely does.
And people do crazy things for their self-worth. But the other thing that I think my big take is Marvel Snap so desperately needs endgame content.
Yeah, that's actually like one of the bigger points about what the game needs to do as a whole. Glenn even said it in a Discord answer recently that that's one of their solutions for the economy is to add more endgame content. I think it's honestly maybe one of the biggest problems with the game. If the only thing you have is new cards to sell to people each week, that's always going to be like a fragile system. They need something for endgame players, whether it's endgame people like Chase, who's at the end of the cosmetics journey, or endgame like Sizer, who's rank 1 on the ladder. They need content for those players. They need something for those players to do.
I've argued to them multiple times that I think part of this is one of the major benefits of having tournaments and a tournament scene. It's not that it gets Joe plays on the shitter involved. It's that it creates stories and involvement for the people who you want to spend money and be most engaged. Like, I
think that's just as easily achievable with those like streamer invitationals that they do. I think that's preferable for a company like Second Dinner. I know it's not what you want or competitive people want. As far as marketing, it's just as effective.
I don't know if it's just as effective for, like, I don't know if it's just as effective for, like, I don't know, who's a streamer who's not super high ranked, but like, or sorry, a non-streamer who like is very, like, okay, for the White Wayne Brady.
Yeah, but if KM Best is in the tournament and Browday is in the tournament, your casual Joe Schmo is going to root for those characters and follow the stories. I agree that it doesn't provide anything for White Wayne Brady, but it's a marketing thing. It's not a content for that guy.
But they're marketing. We need endgame content. You need something to do and aspire to. Like the endgame player, the person who has all the cards, right? Who or has most of the cards and is a little frustrated, but like just plays and watches their number go up and gets a new card and plays, needs something to aspire to, and being able to make that tournament with like that creator invitational, whether it's a creator invitational or whatever, to make that tournament gives that player a reason to play for, not a reason to watch, but something to play for. And then if they don't make it, now they're watching in a different way, right? Because like they tried to get there. And I think that's really, really important. I don't know what you build in the game to make that happen. Maybe like leagues and then League of Champion leagues, right? Like I don't think that would be like terrible. But there needs to be something. Because like there's nothing.
Surprised that there has not been, at the very least, a world championship sponsored by Second Dinner. At least one. Like I that is the one thing that I have been a little surprised that they haven't even like I know there's some other organization that had a world championship or whatever. SnapFan, right? But like a real second dinner sponsored one that combines some of what Glazer's saying with their streamers. I imagine they probably doesn't because they don't want to pay someone to do it, and it will end up being a headache. But I think there's space to both do the streamer stuff, which is pure promotion, and do a combination of the promotion and endgame content. But it is definitely a slippery slope for game companies. Like you give the kind of people who want to go to a world championship an inch, they're going to want to take a mile. And, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
I mean, stuff like that sounds very cool. I'd love it if we had that. I can only relate it to experiences from paper card games like Magic and Pokemon. Competitive circuits for those games is not profitable. It is a drain of resources. It is marketing only for them. Mm. So the only reason Second Dinner would do something like that is marketing. And I don't know if that's the kind of player. I don't know if they're going to get enough new players from that for it to be worth it. The actual experience for the players in the competitive circuit is not valuable to Pokemon or Magic.
But it's also a player retention tool. It's both marketing and a player retention tool.
Yeah, attracting new players is one thing, but they should probably shift focus at least a little bit to keeping the players they have.
But who are the players they have? Is it us? Is it the players in top 100 MMR? Or is it the giant chunk of casuals that don't watch this? Watch your guys' lovely.
We keep saying, it's definitely not our community. We keep saying that there's this giant community that plays. I mean, that doesn't watch any content, but 300,000 unique viewers watch Regis Kilbin every month.
That's still not a lot. But if that's the tip of the iceberg, doesn't that mean that there's a giant?
So I would assume that that's at least a reasonable sampling. I wouldn't assume that there's much more than 1 million to 2 million people playing at this point.
Right, but 300,000 is a lot of people, and it's a good percentage of 1 million, 1.5 million, whatever. It's still not anywhere even close to half or 2/3. It's. Yeah, Regis has a huge viewership. It's true, but once you start getting into these silent majorities in these kind of online games and the metrics that they use, someone who sets up an account and plays for 1 hour, counts as one of their new players, and they will count it in their metrics, right? That they give to netties, right? You really get into the weeds about this stuff, right? That's more smoke and mirrors than.
Well, yeah, that's the real truth. Is Second Dinner has real player numbers? We don't have those. We have no idea,
and we will never get them. And to pretend.
I keep meaning to ask Untapped this, and I should just message Intero. He'll just fucking tell me. Untapped has the largest sample of any of the deck trackers. When they say that we're looking at top 50% infinite, are they counting both the player who has Untapped installed and the opponent who might or might not have Untapped installed? Because I believe they're counting both.
I don't know.
Yeah, right? Because I think that's an important question. Because if they're counting both, then we actually know how many people hit infinite. You see what I mean?
No, I mean, you don't. Because this is again, we don't know how many people hit infinite.
No. So again, if Untapped is tracking both the person who's using Untapped and their opponents, yes, we do.
So you're saying that Untapped's user base must play all of the Untapped, all of the other infinite players at some point.
In a large enough sample, yeah, they play all the other infinite players.
I don't know. That's way above my math pay grade. I'm not even going to pretend that I
think that Untapped might be tracking what's in the other players' decks or what they play to the board, but they're not keeping a running tally of numbers of players.
So I would be relatively surprised because there's seemingly here. I'll check right now. There's seemingly I guess I can't check last season.
I really do think we are trapped in a IB math IA question here. I really
right now there's 20,000 people in Infinite, right? Do we think 20,000 untapped users have hit infinite in the second week of the month? I would be surprised if that was the case. Do you see what I mean?
Where are you seeing that there's 20,000 infinite players on the infinite
So
leaderboard?
you can go to Untapped,
Uh-huh.
and on Untapped, if you have Untapped Premium, you can check different you can check your stats for different player ranks.
Sure.
And there's top 10% infinite, top 50% infinite, and all infinite ranks. So the top 50% infinite is 10,000 people.
Sure. So there's 20,000 users of
So it's
Untapped.
possible that means that there's 20,000 users of Untapped that have hit infinite. It's also possible that 20,000 people have thus far hit infinite. That's the piece of information I need to figure out how to get.
Okay.
Because I think they might be.
We are lost in the sauce.
Yeah, and I'm going to bother Intero while we go to the next section.
At that point, let's do our segment each and every week, which is the variant of the week. Scott, we all know that you picked the blueprint one because Glazer always picks the hips. So why the blueprint one, which also I picked, by the way. So go ahead.
Silly because I knew that Dan Hip one was going to be picked anyway. And I just think the blueprint variants are kind of cool. We only have a handful of inanimate objects in the game. Quinjet, Cerebro, Hulkbuster, and I think playing the blueprint variants of them is pretty cool.
Agreed. I think it's the best blueprint variant to me.
Yeah.
And it really does feel like something that would be like projected in the X Mansion. Yeah, great variant.
So, outside, I don't really like the inanimate object variants or cards very much in the game. It sort of breaks a little bit of the fiction of it for me. But the Dan Hip Cerebro is sort of an exception to that because I think it is stylized enough that it feels like a character, and thus it feels really good to me. I really, really, really like the Dan Hip Cerebro.
Well, what about Dan Hip Helicarrier then? That's pretty
Dan Hip Helicarrier is one of my favorite cards in the game, yes. But there is no Dan Hip Quinjet, so what are
there
you
will
do?
be at some point.
It's okay. We're about to get Cap Shield as a card.
We are. All right, friends. That brings us to wrapping up yet another episode. And as we do at the end of every episode, we remind our loyal listeners, loyal viewers, how to find our awesome guest, Scott, and what he does in his content. So, Scott, if our loyal listeners and loyal viewers would like to become your loyal listeners and loyal viewers, what would they find in your content? Where can they find you? And how can they reach out to you for a parasocial relationship on social media?
Yeah, I'm looking for loyal readers. I'm a written word kind of guy. Come find me on the social medias you can find on the screen. I tweet decks, but I also tweet about comics and things like that. Come and read my articles on SnapFan, and please leave comments. I'm very responsive in the comments. Tomorrow, there'll be a new Burning Questions article, which is weekly hot topics. It's the 51st week I'll be doing it, so come check that out.
Sweet. Congrats on almost a year in a week. So Scott is, just in case you're looking on SnapFan, Sko23. So that's the name you're looking for. Not that you shouldn't read other things. I'm not saying that. Scott is who I personally click all the articles for. Just bluntly, I read everything Den writes and everything Scott writes, partially because I enjoy it and partially because I've made it my job to be on top of everything that I think is important in this game. And Scott's writing is important in this game. If you care about Marvel Snap, you should be reading Scott.
Appreciate it.
True.
Very well said. But also
Go ahead, Roy.
well said is my favorite segment.
Oh no, I don't know if I updated this.
Where Glazer is going to read all of our patrons. I love this. It is ASMR for my soul. All right, Glazer, go ahead. Let's see how fast and has few breaths.
I'm actually going to read the right one from a totally different slideshow. So give me a sec.
Oh, here we go. We got to wait. We are vaping, rather.
Okay. Thank you to Abigail Giesler, Manager Burnett, Irregardless, James Ewingfield, Dirty Casual, Danton, Ellie, FaThorNewman, Good Dog Gamer, Ink Guy, Frost Fan, Jane Every, Thinking Poker, Prime Brian, Ryan Wood, Ryan Burke, Caretix Lee, Koirei, Kazushi, Archangel 3K, Black Dahlia, Provost, The Goat Seeker, Hollowed, Quid Pro Joe, Snap, Decisions Joe, Fat Nick, Mr. Kerfuffled, Cables, Ginger Prime, Philip Rackridge, Haplo, Kane Loggins of the Jane Zone, Rob Silverman, The Biz of Black Jeebus 23, Extra C and Skippy G, Jessica Campbell, Tommy Nyquist, King of Bros, Great Kazoo, Kev Zioto, Ludacris, Corbin, John Q, Jim McHugh, Clam, Colonel Forbin, The Stout, 8th Sage, Mod Supreme Models, Green Goblin, Unibot, Flan 56, Stephen, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B. J. D. McDonaldino, The Fuzzy Dunlop, Spectrum X, Hoot, Matt H. TJ McHadging, No Flex, Icolaris, Mr. Craig Sterry, BG, Zodrix, The King of Canada, Denman, Falcon, Spike Jones, Two Ties, The Great Learners, The Pirate King, Tuccrr, and of course, Gunny T.
All right. Before we head out, I want to remind our loyal listeners and loyal viewers how to engage with us on social media and get into that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful parasocial relationship with Aaron. Our Twitter/X is SnapJudgeCast. We are on the other app on bluer skies at Blue Sky at SnapJudgeGlazer. Our email is snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com. And last but not least, our YouTube is Snap Judgments Pod. All right, that brings us actually to the end of another episode. Scott, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was awesome having you on. You were a great guest. You're welcome back anytime.
Great. Thank you, guys.
All right, Aaron, my friend, I am so grateful to have done this episode with you, my friend, like I am every week. It is a true pleasure.
Peace and love, everybody.
All right, friends, until next week, stay safe, make good choices, and keep on snapping.